Hello, welcome to the Roundtable. We are nearing the end of August, which means less than half the year 2024 is left. If you have fallen behind your New Year's resolutions by now, please get back on track with them. Here are today's guests. We are joined by Professor Jin. Welcome back, Professor Choi.
Thank you for having me.
We are also joined by Professor Jin. Welcome to the Roundtable.
Glad to be back.
The trajectory of the Russia-Ukraine war is changing. In 2.5 years after it began with Russia's invasion in February 2022, Ukraine, which desperately struggled against Russian forces, carried out a bold gambit to strike back at Russia and make a surprising incursion into its territory. Professor Jin, for our viewers, could you explain the current state of the war?
The Ukraine's counteroffensive in the eastern Donbass region was failed, so that led to the demoralization of the Ukrainian troops.
Right.
However, the surprise attack of the Ukrainian on Kursk changed the situation completely, increasing the troop morale. And the Atlantic Council, the US think tank, reported that the ongoing Ukrainian attack on the Russian territory is having seriously damaging the leadership of the Putin. And there is a growing public opinion that Putin has failed to protect the Russian territory and citizens. And this incursion of the Ukraine might have led the Russian citizens feel shocked because it is the first foreign military attack in the Russian territory since World War II. And on the other hand, some experts are saying that this Ukrainian attack would lead Ukraine to the strategic defeat over time. The surprise attack has weakened the defense capabilities of the Ukraine in the Donetsk region, and that region has been already heavily under pressure by the Russian forces. Considering these situations, Russia may seize the opportunity to completely take control over the Donetsk region. So I think we need to see what consequences this incursion of Ukraine will bring.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said that this push would make Russia realize what it has done. But he did not clearly reveal the goal of the operation. So, Professor Jin, please clarify this point. On one hand, it's such a bold gambit. As Sujin mentioned, that it is the first time that Russia's territory was attacked by outside forces since the World War II. At the same time, by moving the forces away from Donbass, the Ukraine defense against the Russia invasion has been thinner, right? So what's going on here?
There are several strategic goals of President Zelenskyy. The first one is Ukraine wants to distract Russia. So Ukraine wants to make Russia move its forces away from the fighting in eastern part of Ukraine. So if this goal is achieved, although I'm not sure whether it is successful or not, then it can give some Ukrainian forces some relief and also make it harder for Russia to manage its troops. And secondly, the Ukraine want to change the story. The Ukraine is showing that it can carry out big operation, so it can increase the morale of its people, and also change how the world sees the war in Ukraine. And thirdly, Ukraine wants to gain an advantage in potential peace negotiation with Russia. So by moving into Russian territory, even for a short time, Ukraine could have a better position in future peace talk. In other words, it's like gaining a higher ground in negotiation. And lastly, the President Zelenskyy of Ukraine wants to show that Ukraine can carry out this big military operation, so it needs more international support, especially from Western countries, like a battle weapon and also long-range missile. So he wants to show that with the better tools in his hand, Ukraine can do even better on the battlefield. So in summary, these actions are part of Ukraine's strategy to manage the war better and get more international support.
Sujin, as you mentioned that just about a year ago, when massive counterattack somehow failed, the prospect of war to be won by Ukraine was quite dim, right? There was a lot of pessimism. But on the other hand, from the standpoint of Russia, Russia was supposed to win the war handedly in early 2022, about 3 years ago, because Russia is second largest military in the world.
Yeah.
So what's happening here? Why can't Russia finish the war? Or what about the prospect of the peaceful negotiations for the actually ending the war?
The Professor Yoon-hee Kang at Kookmin University, and who's also the expert in the Eurasia region, mentioned that even if Russia wins the war, the Western countries may not let Russia achieve the goal in the peace negotiations. And in last February, the G7 countries pledged for the full support for Ukraine, such as providing the emergency resources and freezing the Russian assets until they compensate Ukraine for the damages. And the other option we can think about is the ceasefire. And from the Ukraine perspective, the obscurity brought by ceasefire can make them claim the territory occupied by the Russia as part of their territories. But in the case of the Russia, the ceasefire offers little gain, even though they can still maintain the control over the territory occupied by themselves. They already poured a lot of resources to the war, and they had to endure the international isolation for it. So if Russia refused to ceasefire and continue the combat, I think the war can drag on even longer than we expected. And we might need to consider the other factor as well. The outcome of the US presidential election can change the whole picture. So for instance, Trump has mentioned that if he is re-elected as the president, he will end the Russian and Ukraine war. Yeah, so that's another point we need to think about.
But it's a very fluid definition, ending the war, right?
Right.
In the eyes of the Ukraine may be different from the ending the war in the eyes of Russians. Right? So, Professor Choi Hyun-jin, let's just stick to the same topic. What accounts for the prolonged war, and is ceasefire even possible?
Predicting when the war might end is really difficult. But as the war continues, both countries have a goal in this prolonged war. For Ukraine, if they continue to fight, that means they can also continue to receive more support from outside the world. And this support might include financial aid and also military supplies and also political support, which are very crucial for continuing its fight and also important for possible rebuilding after the war. And also Ukraine is also striving for stronger security commitment from outside the world, such as joining NATO to prevent further attack in the future. And for Russia, when the war continues, Russia also want to use this war to boost feelings of nationalism among its people, to unify Russian citizens by showing Russia as a country under threat from outside the world. So this can provide some political benefit to President Putin. So that's why I say in this prolonged war, both parties has something to gain. But however, it's very difficult to say who gains more in this more than 2 years war, because both countries are also facing huge losses as well. So the situation is very complicated, and just stopping the war to seek peace is not easy for either country. So I would like to say like this: there is little to gain by pulling back first. That is the problem. If one side gives up first, right now, it could lead to serious negative outcome. And therefore, perhaps this is even worse than continuing the fight. So in such situation, the pulling back first has more risk than potential benefit. And that's why both parties in this war are now continuing this war, even though there are lots of losses.
Sujin, let's talk about the likely consequences of Ukraine's surprise attack inside Russian territory. Some experts say that that's a huge success, which will put additional pressure on Russian President Vladimir Putin to agree upon ceasefire negotiations. But other experts say that it would only make Putin prolong the war. What's your opinion on this?
Well, there might be several reasons for the Ukrainian incursion. And I think the main motivation for them to do that was to gain the advantage in the future negotiations with Russia. However, I think it's questionable whether they can achieve those goals by doing this incursion, because many experts are saying that this incursion is kind of a dangerous gamble rather than the game changer. Already, the Ukrainian forces are struggling with the defense of the Eastern Front, and stretching their forces thin would even lead them to lose more territory over time. And in addition to that, the Western sanctions are implemented, but Russia is kind of showing the paradox of sanctions, right? So Russia is kind of creating a new economic ecosystem by strengthening the ties with China, expanding the trade with the global south, and also moving away from the dollar-based transactions. And Russia's heavy industry, including the military and industrial complex, are even boosting. And also the IMF announced that the Russia's economic growth rate is exceeding 3%, which is even higher than the Western countries. So given all these aspects, it's really uncertain whether the Ukrainian forces can actually maintain the occupation of the Russia territory, considering their lack of manpower and the weaponry. And even some experts are warning that the Ukraine seems to be resulting in the Pyrrhic victory, which means the cost outweighs the gains. So yeah, we need to see.
It's a very complex situation, to say the least. Amid this situation, Chinese Premier Li Qiang visited Russia last week. Also, after visiting Russia last month, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Ukraine for the first time since the war broke out. When he was in Moscow, Prime Minister Modi raised the issue of the war in a meeting with Putin. So, Hyunjin, these leaders are really busy to play their role of mediators. How effective will be their intervention in terms of bringing at least ceasefire to the situation?
Okay, as you said, Chinese Premier Li Qiang recently visited Russia and met with President Putin. And we guess that maybe he carried some mediation message from Xi Jinping due to the recent escalation in Ukraine because of the possible use of a nuclear weapon by Russia. So that's why China is very sensitive to this situation. And also, Indian Prime Minister Modi visited Ukraine, and he also visited Russia last month, right?
Both places.
Both places, and now he's trying to mediate between these two countries, calling for dialogue between Zelenskyy and President Putin. So the question is, how effective are their mediation efforts? I'm a little bit skeptical about its effectiveness because I think both China and India are not key players in this war in Ukraine. The real key players in this war are the United States and also NATO and Ukraine and Russia themselves. So the real question is, how can we predict the end of this war? I'd like to say that there is a very unpleasant condition that make ceasefire or potential peace deal more feasible. Okay? This is very unpleasant. That is giving land concessions to Russia. So according to recent poll in July this year in Ukraine, there are a growing number of Ukrainian people supporting some land concessions to Russia for a quicker end to the war. This is about 1/3 of Ukrainian people. Now, although still the majority opposes giving any land to Russia. So if this kind of public opinion in Ukraine that is supporting land concession continues to rise, it might push President Zelenskyy to start some peace talk with Russia eventually.
I see. I think you made a very important point that neither China nor India is a member of the NATO, so they are not really a direct stakeholder about this situation in Ukraine.
It is, yeah.
The war between Ukraine and Russia is now entering its third year, unfortunately. And the result of the United States presidential election in November will make a huge impact on its course. Let's move on to the next topic. There are foreign YouTubers who love Korea and introduce the nation on their popular channels. We met some of them. Please first take a look at the video clip.
잔머리에 든 건 없어도 행복해 니들처럼 대갈 굴리며 복잡하게 난 살아야 어차피 나는 난 니는 이 싸가진 없어도 예의는 있게 살자 주의와 이거을 사람들 오지라
My next adventure will be in South Korea, exploring all the neighborhoods in Seoul.
Foreign YouTubers volunteering to serve as honorary ambassadors for Korea. The channels on Korean cuisine and tourist destinations are growing popular. Many foreign YouTubers are enjoying popularity worldwide with their inspirational and creative videos on Korea. Travel YouTube channels are introducing less known, hidden gems rather than famous, tourist-packed destinations.
Wow. Not really what I had in mind. I've never had crab.
Falling in love with Korea, Camilla majored in Korean studies at a Russian college. Recently, she is gaining popularity with a video on her parents' visit to Korea.
제가 사실은 한국을 알리는 일을 한 지 조금 됐는데 라디오에서 일을 하거든요. 그래서 러시아 정치자들을 위한 프로그램을 하고 있는데 한국의 다양한 면들에 대해서 되게 많이 궁금해 하시더라고요. 근데 라디오는 한정적이다 보니까 이런 내용을 영상으로 만들면 어떨까 싶어서 유튜브를 하기 시작했어요. 정말 많이 늘은 것 같아요. 심지어 저희 50대 고모가 원래 한국에 전혀 관심이 없었는데 갑자기 어느 날 BTS 팬이 됐다고 그래서 지금 한국어를 공부하고 있는데 혹시 도와줄 수 있냐고 이렇게 연락이 왔어요. 그래서 정말 러시아에서 한국에 대해서 그럼 K-팝에 대해서 엄청 좋게 생각하고 있는 것 같아요, 지금.
Her latest video is about eating Korean foods for Mayerbok, the last hottest day of the season. Samgyetang, samgyeopsal, fried chicken, beer, and spicy ramen are nothing special for Koreans. But foreign YouTubers love trying and eating these new foods. Foreign YouTubers are producing videos on various issues as well as food. They talk about Korea's public security, rare banknotes, and Korean war artifacts. Foreign YouTubers with a major in Korean studies discuss topics that even Koreans barely know of.
지금 한국에 관심 있는 분들은 대부분 한국에 대해서 드라마를 아니면 김밥을 통해서 많이 알고 있는 것 같은데 저희 가족 일상생활을 보여주면서 한국의 그냥 일상생활에 대해서 많이 알게 됐으면 좋겠어요.
Rather than character lists, all similar travel guidebooks, contents about Koreans' real lifestyles are increasingly appealing to viewers. The introductions of culture can be powerful. Foreigners loving Korea are serving as civilians diplomats to introduce the nation's history and culture.
I personally often watch foreign YouTubers' videos introducing Korea. Sujin, what makes the content of Korea so popular worldwide?
Well, I think for Korean viewers, those content is providing a fresh insight to the Korean culture. And for Koreans, really find it fascinating to see the foreigners enjoying the Korean culture. And in sometimes they even know more about the Korean culture than Koreans themselves. And for instance, the video clip which was recently uploaded by a foreign YouTuber is titled First Scallion Kimchi, pakimchi in Korean. And he was making those scallion kimchi, but frankly speaking, I don't know how to make scallion kimchi by myself. And there were many Koreans commenting on his video clip, and some were saying that it was really impressive to see him understanding the whole recipe perfectly and even adapting them to the local taste. And some people also mentioned that seeing him mix the seasonings and scraping every bit of it into the container reminds the Koreans of their own grandmothers.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think this video clip uploaded by the foreign YouTubers are providing fresh and new insight to the Korean culture, which is pretty much familiar with the Koreans.
Yeah, although these are very familiar items to us as Koreans, but it is also very interesting and revealing to see them through foreigners' eyes.
Right. And for the international viewers, this video clip satisfy the curiosity and also improve the understanding of the Korean culture from the perspective of the foreigners. And instead of providing the unconditional praises, these foreign YouTubers are providing the real experiences of their living in Korea and unfiltered aspect of the Korean culture and their personal thoughts. So I think this authenticity are providing a genuine insight into Korean culture, contributing to the popularity of the content.
An increasing number of foreign tourists are coming to Korea after watching such social media posts. 현재 social media is a tool to convey experiences and emotions. For this regard, it seems necessary for us to use it more actively.
Yes, we need to utilize this social media more actively because it has been very effective for boosting our tourism. So seeing this success, the local governments of Korea are now actively working with the foreign influencers as well to promote tourism. Now, for example, the Jeju city in Gyeongnam province recently launched a global campaign by inviting the 20 influencers from countries like Canada, US, and France. So these influencers are based in Korea and have around 15,000 followers each. And they are using social media platform to highlight what makes Jeju favorite and attractive place to visit. And similarly, Jeju Island is planning to invite influencers from Malaysia and Indonesia in this September to promote the island autumn tourism and to draw more foreign tourists.
Many tourists visit Korea after watching videos posted by celebrities and social media influencers. They would have similar experiences too. So Sujin, what is the most attractive observation or experience points or like activities or items?
Well, if we compare with the past, the foreign tourists usually visited the traditional sites like the palace and Namsan, but the tourism trend seems to be completely changing to immersing in the real Korean daily lives. So for example, foreigners are enjoying experiencing the personal color test and eating ramen nearby Han River, and visiting the fortune-telling cafe and ordering the delivery foods like chicken, and which is all parts of the contemporary Korean culture. And according to the tourism platform, the Create Trip, the beauty shop saw the biggest increase in the number of foreign tourism this year, and the foreigners really like to have the Korean style, focusing on the K-beauty. And one of the most popular programs were having the idol style makeup and, taking the instant photo shots. And I think the underlying reason behind this trend of tourism change might be because of the increase in the individual tourism and the influence of the K-culture. So as the package tour goes down and the individual tourism goes up, many people are finding social media for the tourism information, and they tend to learn more about the Korean culture, the real Korean culture. And these foreigners prefer the experience-based tourism in trendy places like Yeonnam-dong, Hannam-dong, Seongsu-dong, instead of the traditional tourism spot like Myeongdong, Insa-dong, right? And I think they really want to feel the authentic Korean culture and feel the sensibility, the local sensibility.
It was 1988 when South Korea hosted its first Olympic Games in Seoul. There was a turning point for South Korea to be introduced the main global stages. After that, the soft power and the cultural attraction of South Korea have ever been expanding in the world. This is all for today. We'll be back next week with more up-to-date issues. Professors, thank you so much for sharing your insights and experience with us today.
Thank
you very much.
Thanks for watching and see you next week.